Today's Manhwa is about a good-for-nothing gaming addict who rots in his room 24/7. Bro got nothing in his hand except a hot body. While our female lead is a redhead baddie and the most hyped snake queen in the realm of a game, our mech plays the most. The series starts in a barren land where men are in the middle of a war and one side has a hydrotype monster. One soldier rushes forward and stabs another man through the throat, and the injured man tries to speak, but no words come out as he chokes on his blood before falling to the ground. The other soldiers look terrified of the man who attacked him. The man starts to wobble, and the soldiers charge in because they think he is exhausted. His heart feels like it is about to burst, and every time he exhales, it feels like a knife scraping the roof of his mouth, and he cannot tell whether the liquid dripping down is blood or sweat. His senses tell him that everything around him is real. He tightens his grip on his blade, and status windows appear showing that his hidden traits are activating. The men surround him, believing they can kill him now that he is worn out. The scene flashes back to his room, which looks like Asmongold's room, where he is sitting at his computer after seeing a game over screen. His life is unproductive, and he spends his weekdays playing games while others work hard. He quits his job months earlier and locks himself in his room, living like a gaming addict, which he has already been doing for 5 years. He spends 5 years playing a single game called Pangenia. The game gains brief popularity because it promises to grant one dream if someone clears it, but no one succeeds and the player count slowly drops to zero. The game is known for brutal difficulty, powerful bosses, companions who betray players, named NPCs that hunt characters with bounties, and a permanent death system where everything disappears when a character dies. He loses a character that has 8 of the 15 known unique items, and the game deletes it while giving him 1.6 million soul points. Soul points are earned based on the value of dead characters and can be invested when creating a new one, with higher investment making growth easier. The investment limit per talent is 10,000 soul points, and with the amount he has, he can invest in everything. Knowing he will never clear the game, he decides to make one final character to enjoy the game properly before uninstalling it. As he moves to press the button, a flashback appears showing a woman apologizing to him, and his name is revealed to be Hunmong. She leaves him because she believes he has no future, and she is at an age where marriage matters, while he understands that she is right and cannot say anything in response. She compares him to her friends who are marrying successful people, while he stays at home without direction, and her disappointment grows when he does not try to stop her from leaving. This breakup happens 3 months earlier after they date for more than 5 years, and it leads him to quit his job in anger and lock himself in his room, becoming a complete gaming addict. He clicks randomly on the screen and uses his soul points excessively to rearrange his stats, believing he has sunk far enough already when a message appears stating that a hidden piece has been activated. He feels confused because he has never seen the game react this way before, and soon his body is overwhelmed by a strange sensation that begins pleasant but quickly turns violent as his heart races and his head rings in pain. He loses consciousness and collapses onto the floor as the screen turns red instead of blue. When he opens his eyes again, he is being whipped by a man and realizes he is surrounded by other slaves, and confusion fills him as he takes in the situation. His hands shake when he sees a hydreigon nearby, and he is forced back into formation while struggling to understand what is happening. He recognizes the hydreigon and the environment as something familiar from Pangenia, and when he calls up his status window, it actually appears. All of his stats are set to 12, and he has many hidden talents and traits, which makes him realize that he has entered the game. His heart races as he remembers that stats normally range from 1 to 10 based on soul point investment, making his current condition abnormal. The ground begins to shake, and he sees fear on the faces of the slave traders as the army of the Desert Queen appears, having broken the non-aggression pact. He recognizes the Desert Queen and her title as the Snake Princess as she rides a hydreigon. A status window appears announcing the generation of a main quest, which turns out to be survival, with rewards depending on the outcome and a warning that death in the game will also mean death in reality. Panic sets in as arrows rain down, killing the slaves and traders around him. And he freezes in shock until one arrow grazes his cheek and forces him to accept that this is real. One of his hidden traits activates, known as Heart of the Iron-Blooded Monarch, which only appears when every physical talent is fully maxed and grants resistance to exhaustion, reduces the chance of being caught off guard, and allows him to grasp the situation quickly. He looks down and notices a slave trader's sword and the keys, and he realizes that staying here means death, so survival becomes his only option. As he frees himself from the shackles, a man attacks him from behind in an attempt at a surprise strike, but Hun grabs the blade and a bright light erupts from it as he counters the attack, dashing past the man and cutting him down. Uh, Another hidden trait activates at that moment called Weapon Master, and a surge of blue aura bursts from him as more men charge toward him. One attacker thrusts a spear toward his head, but he dodges, slices off the spear tip, and kills the man in the same motion, then catches the flying spearhead and throws it into another enemy with expert precision. Another attacker swings an axe, but Hyun dodges backward and instinctively sees every trajectory of the weapon, allowing him to guide the attack away and find an opening marked by a blue line. He follows that line, stabs the man through the heart, takes the axe, and ends his life before he can react. Hyunmong grips both weapons and feels strain as more enemies surround him, while another hidden trait called Masterful Hands activates and rapidly increases his weapon proficiency, raising both sword and spear skills to level 6 instantly. He realizes that hidden traits allow him to fight far beyond what his level should permit, but even that advantage cannot sustain him forever against the hundreds of troops gathered. A flashback reveals the Snake Princess receiving orders to erase all remnants of a failed expedition to protect the desert city from blame, which leads her to this battlefield. Back in the present, Hunmong stands surrounded by fallen bodies, still alive, as his level rises to 2 and restores his health, mana, and fatigue, shocking the remaining soldiers. The Snake Princess intervenes and steps forward, revealing herself as Isabella von der Zien, a level 8 individual bound to the desert by the Queen's curse, whose he's in due to the status ailment from the Desert Queen's curse. He can't check any of her other things because his understanding of her is too low. He says that he can't win against a level 8 no matter how many times he tries, since the highest level in the game is 10, and the standard that separates the strongest level is 7. And from 7 and onwards, the real difference begins to show, and the gap in levels can hardly ever be overturned. Level 8 means that they can almost be considered the strongest anywhere. Simply put, they're at the level of bosses of very famous organizations. He says for him to have to face a disaster like this is crazy. And then he realizes that it says she can't leave the desert due to the curse. And he thinks about something. She hops off the Hydra, approaching him, saying that the show was interesting, but he needs to die right here and now. She reaches for her blades, and he says the reason he played the game, which was criticized for its extreme difficulty, is because even for the hardest games, he would find a way to clear them no matter the difficulty, and that he was one of those crazy masochist players. But he knows how to clear this. As she charges in, thrusting forward toward his head, he asks if she wants the Queen's curse lifted. She stops, creating a shockwave right before piercing his throat, and starts to hesitate. She gets right into his face, asking him who the hell he is, and he says he reads the stars and leads people to the stars and that he is the star bearer. He says he can help her lift the Queen's curse so she can leave the desert. She looked genuinely surprised, and he says this must mean it worked. The Starbearer is an NPC class that a player needs to transcend the max level, and the class only exists for NPCs. And he says this must mean it worked. The Starbearer is an NPC class that a player needs to transcend the max level, and the class only exists for NPCs. So of course he is not a real Starbearer. But to remove the Queen's curse, she needs the blessing of stars, which is given from a Starbearer. Since Isabella wants to escape from the curse, she would have to listen to him. The reason why he was certain that she'd like to escape is simple. He knows all about her because she is a character that he made. She was an unfortunate character that he had to neglect because he chose the wrong starting point. The Queen's Curse is from the player's perspective, a device to keep the player within the bounds of the starting map during the early game, but a player's character is made to see the end of this game. And they are originally supposed to travel around the world to see the ending, but he left her stuck like a bird in a cage, and she's been tied down here due to the curse of the Queen. She asks for his name, and he says that his name is Randolph, and the status window accepts it as his name has now been set. So we will call him that from now on. They stare at one another, and she turns, saying that she'll postpone killing him for now. However, if he is lying, she will rip him into pieces. She then tells the men to escort him as he is an honored guest. So he must be treated with the utmost care. The main quest has now been completed, and based on the results, and since it was so record-breaking on the border of miraculous, his rewards have been upgraded due to the constellation's favor, and some of them have got their eyes on him. But they continue bumping up his upgrades until finally he obtains a broken piece of the golden scale, the soul of the High Dragon and the sword of Michaela. He crashes onto the floor, saying somehow he survived as his vision starts to go blurry, and we see that he earned a total of 220 points, and he'll be added to the Hall of Fame for main quest. That night at a palace, we see him laying in the tub looking at his status windows and his rewards. He says that the soul of the Hydragonon is infamous for only having dropped once ever since the release of the game, and a must-have item for the early game would be the sword of Michaela he got. He didn't think that he'd be able to get both of them at the same time, but he wonders what the broken piece of the golden scale is about. Something about synchronization between reality and Pangenia. Three women then barge into the room asking if he would like for them to wash him. And he says just his feet. But he understands that this is a test. As they start to squeeze his grippers, he explains that they are Isabella's chambermaids, and if he showed any reaction to them, she would get suspicious of him because the star bearer does not react to any sexual desires. He starts thinking about his dead grandma, telling himself to keep that thing down, but he opens his eyes because he can't resist the temptation. He starts to stare at one of the women's bazas before he opens the status window to block it. Something catches his attention, though, as he's almost at 8% of the breakdown of Pangenia. There's also a leaderboard showing all the main quest points, but it mentions that the breakdown near the boundary between Pangenia and reality shatters, and when the breakdown goes over 10%, the first crack will proceed. He wonders what this is and finally looks at the cool leaderboards, where he sees Randolph ranked at number 1, and because he has been ranked in survival, he unlocks the logout feature, while the game warns him to be careful because his character is vulnerable while logged out. The woman calls out to him, but he says this is impossible because he recognizes the names Gracia and I Love Mint Chocolate, and he had thought they quit because they disappeared, but now he realizes they must have been summoned to this world just like him. He notices that he has a logout feature, which means he can leave this game, so he tells the woman to stop because he needs to communicate with the stars. And when she says he must be treated with the utmost care, he replies that if he does not communicate with the stars in time, he will lose all of his power, and they should ask the princess if she truly wants that. One of the women looks shocked and runs off, while Randolph says he will see the princess after he finishes communicating. And once the door closes, he admits he is glad the excuse worked because he was afraid he would be stuck there forever. He decides to log out of the game, clicks the button, and the game warns him again to keep his character safe because if the character dies, he will die in real life. But the logout completes and he returns to reality. Chaos fills the city as fires spread through the streets, and a giant monster walks through the flames while people scream and an emergency alert sounds, and he looks out the window in confusion as a praying mantis monster stands directly below him. The monster notices him and screams, causing him to fall onto the floor in shock as he asks why monsters from Pangenia are in the real world, and a golden fragment falls from his pocket, which is the item he received as loot. He remembers waking up earlier and thinking it was just a vivid dream until he saw the bag and the yellow item on his desk and wondered if they had always been there, realizing that everything must have been real. He tries to check the game again, but the page no longer exists and the home page is gone. And then he hears screaming outside as people shout about a monster that has already killed several people while police try to stop it. As he sits there in panic, he realizes this must be what it meant when the boundary was broken. And when he touches the fragment, he feels something and understands that if monsters from the game can appear in reality, then items from the game might work here too. He rushes to the bag, pulls out the Michaela sword and the soul, and struggles to understand how to use them until he sees a status window saying the gold scale allows synchronization between reality and Pangenia and can be turned on or off. He turns it on immediately, believing this is his only chance, and a goddess like figure appears behind him and grants him power while saying the synchronization is complete, explaining that in reality he will be called Hun, and in Pangenia he will be called Randolph, and that he has 24 hours remaining. Outside, a woman runs while holding her child as the child asks where her father is, and the mother says he will follow soon. But rubble suddenly falls and crashes down, and the woman throws her daughter away to save her, while she is trapped beneath the debris. As the child screams, the mother tells her to run, and another woman rushes over barefoot with torn stockings and asks if she is all right, but she quickly sees the injuries are too severe and agrees to take the child while promising to protect her. The trapped woman looks on with regret as the praying mantis approaches, and as she sits there, believing this is the end, a powerful slash cuts through the monster and severs its head in a single strike. Hungmong lands on the floor and immediately turns, slicing everything apart. The woman stands frozen, completely bewildered but extremely relieved, and she wonders who this man is. One of the praying mantises charges straight at him, and she yells for him to look out, but a massive hydreigon head suddenly bites the creature in half. Shocked, she asks what the hell that thing is as the hydreigon roars loudly. Hyenmong climbs onto its head and tells her to stay still, and she wonders if she is dreaming because she just witnessed a real hero. A child runs back to their mother, and more people gather to help. She hears more fighting and watches Hyun slice apart additional mantises, then asks who he really is. News reports begin spreading that monsters are appearing all over the world, not just Korea, killing people and destroying civilization. At the same time, warriors appear who cut down monsters that bullets cannot harm. A man in armor tells people not to be afraid because he will protect them, and the world starts changing rapidly. Elsewhere, a man watches everything on his phone and mocks them for wasting fragments. His player name is Massacre. He says the age of chaos has begun. Everyone is now a competitor, and reality and Pangenia are merging into one. Those who gain fragments will become the protagonists of this era. The rankings finally update after 2 years, with the top score reaching an absurd 220 points, and he is ranked 5th. He wonders if Randolph is Phantom, also known as Ghost, the strongest player in Pangenia. Phantom formed the Demon Realm expedition and reached just before the final clear before it failed completely. Since the strongest character is summoned upon death, Phantom must have appeared in reality when the expedition failed. Although appearance and equipment reset, talents remain, explaining his overwhelming score. Back with Randolph, he wakes up and realizes that monsters have appeared in reality and summoned players have appeared as well, all taking the forms of their Pangenia characters. The situation becomes clear to him as he remembers how his last character nearly reached the game's ending before high-ranking NPC mercenaries blocked their progress and even friendly NPC companions betrayed them. No matter how much he plans, their interference always exceeds his expectations, and he begins to suspect that those variables are players like him who do not want the ending to be reached. If the boundary between worlds has collapsed, he cannot stay safe by logging out, so he needs to become stronger as fast as possible. He walks into Isabella's room, and she asks if he is done talking to the stars. He says he has come to keep his promise, but only with a condition. When she asks what he wants, he tells her he needs to go to the sanctuary. She looks shocked and asks if he is insane, but he explains that the second main quest is to obtain a class, and the one he wants exists there along with a hidden star. This quest will end the moment he gets his class. Later, they head toward the sanctuary, and Isabella walks forward through a pool of blood after wiping out an entire group of guards without a single injury. Randolph notes that it only takes her a few minutes and thinks there is no ally more reliable than her. He remembers convincing her earlier by telling her the star is hidden there, and that he discovered it by chance while raising his previous character, making him the only player who knows its exact location. He tells her that to lift her curse with the blessing of the stars, he must obtain it. She warns him that the sanctuary is forbidden and that she would be punished if anyone finds out, but he reminds her that she can enter and that this is her last chance to leave the desert. Now he says that if he had failed to persuade her, his head would already be rolling on the ground. They arrive at the holy ground and stand before a descending staircase as a hidden subquest activates, telling him to explore the sanctuary and warning that the recommended level is 8 and the area is filled with poison and demonic energy. His hidden giant demon resistance protects him, and he knows that without it, a level 2 beginner could never enter. Although sending Isabella ahead would grant good rewards, that does not matter because this is where he will obtain his class. He smiles, already knowing which one he wants, as Isabella looks over the edge of the sanctuary and realizes how terrifyingly far the fall is and how distant the pillars are from one another. She chuckles and says they have taken the wrong path, adding that even star bearers can make mistakes. He asks where she is going, and she says the way ahead is clearly a trap, explaining that downward air currents are meant to sweep away anyone who crosses without knowledge, and she mocks him for failing to notice something so simple. He asks if she is scared, saying he did not know she was that kind of character. This immediately sparks her pride, and she says she does not know fear and reminds him that she is called the Snake Princess. He replies that she seems timid, which annoys her. She says the chances of it being a trap are high and casually claims she has a cramp in her leg. He says it cannot be helped and tells her to get on his back. She becomes embarrassed and asks if he has a death wish, but he calmly says she admitted she had a cramp and there is no time to waste, explaining that when dawn comes and the dead warriors are found, she will be suspected and the Queen's pursuit team will come after her. So it is better to move forward instead of hesitating out of fear. She hesitates, then climbs onto his back and says it is only because of her leg, and he replies with a flat, "Of course." He tells her to hold on tight, then instead of running toward the pillars, he runs straight toward empty space. She asks where he is going and says there is no path, but he leaps forward anyway. His hidden trait, Mutant, activates and allows him to see secrets invisible to normal eyes, and he begins walking on an invisible path, shocking her. He tells her this is the real path, and she asks how he knows something even she, the second in command of Fezzelmere, does not know. She notices that despite the poison and demonic energy filling the sanctuary, he is not even short of breath, and too many strange things are happening to explain it, as him simply being a star bearer. He teases her by saying he did not know the second in command was afraid of heights, and she tells him to shut up, though she also finds it strange how relaxed he is around her. It feels less like confidence and more like greeting an old friend. So she asks if they have met before. He says they have never met in the same place, which confuses her, and he explains that he has seen her, but she has never seen him. He places his hand on a wall that begins to glow brightly, and the space around them twists until they arrive in a place that truly feels like a sanctuary. Randolph explains that a domain barrier covers the area, and only those who follow the correct path can see what lies ahead. And if his memory is right, what comes next is even more dangerous. Bright red eyes light up, the ground shakes, and massive golems rise while releasing killing intent. He says the guardian this time is a golem, and judging by the rune on its chest, it is upper tier, meaning even a single hit would kill him at his current level. He asks if her leg is better, and she tells him to keep talking from the sidelines. The golems charge, one swinging its fist at her, but she grins and slices it apart instantly, blowing off half its body. She says it will be over soon as she leaps across debris, cuts another golem in half, and destroys the rest. Randolph comments that calling her an assassin when she can defeat national species golems is absurd, and even though he only created her character, he still finds it hard to believe. After the fight, he says this is what level 8 truly means as a status window appears, telling him he can acquire the class Golem Maker. He wonders if the system counts Isabella's kills as his own and realizes it may recognize them as a party. Golem Maker is a rare and high tier summoner class, but it is not what he wants, so he rejects it and says the one who will grant his desired class is something else entirely. Purple miasma fills the sanctuary, and Isabella looks around in confusion as a massive shadow looms over Randolph. A status window appears, announcing that the ancient king, master of the mountain, buried by the nameless star, rages against the intruders. Randolph says it has finally appeared and identifies it as the greater god who guards the stars, the ancient king Dramit, noting that the encounter is only recommended for level 10 players. As Dramit approaches, the pressure becomes overwhelming, and Isabella questions whether Randolph truly expects her to fight the Mountain Guardian. He tells her not to worry and claims the creature is gentle and never attacks first, only for it to immediately strike, barely missing her and knocking her to the ground. She glares at him while he looks confused and says he remembers Dramit as a friendly guide, which makes her snap that nothing about a giant snake looks friendly. Dramit declares Isabella the challenger of the sanctuary and demands she prove her qualification,